Hello there guys and welcome back to the channel, and today we do have an interesting video in store for you. So today's video we're going to be talking about Super-Skrull. So he is the most recent addition to Marvel Contest Champions. Well, technically he isn't even really properly been released because he has only been available to early access bundles. His arena is coming next week, and so are his Cavalier crystals, and then eventually he's gonna be added to the feature crystal, so on and so forth. But is he any good? Well, that is what we are going to try and find out and definitively showcase in today's video. So for all intents and purposes for today's video, I'm going to be using a rank 3 4-star Super-Skrull that has been awakened and taken up to Sig 99. I did get this one from early access bundle, so that is what I have to play with, and I have no interest in taking him higher up for now because, well, nobody's ranking 4-star champions really anymore. Right, so before we get any further into the video, there are a couple of things that I am quite hopeful about and some abilities that I do like and appreciate. Now, number one would be his Sig ability, especially at higher level, because whenever he enters his Cosmic Overload mode, he passively starts gaining power, kind of like a Doctor Strange, but he doesn't have his combat power rate reduced, so that combination should potentially mean that he has access to a lot of power and he can spam plenty of special attacks, which could be quite fun thing, and his saving grace for a damage output. Right, in addition to that, he also is immune to shock and incinerate effects, which is very, very rare combination of immunities. I actually, from top of my head, don't think any other champion in this game is immune simultaneously to shock and incinerate, if you are not counting, let's say, Ghost or champions like that that deal with these debuffs in other ways. But there are obviously some similar immunity sets. And rest of these Fury buffs grant block penetration and armor buffs grant critical resistance. Those are just pain in the butt on defense, which I suspect is going to be where the character is going to get used. Either way, to kind of best demonstrate where he does and doesn't stand in the contest, we're going to be comparing him to Annihilus, because Annihilus actually has fairly similar kit to this guy. He has access to a whole bunch of Furies after his level 2s. He has Incinerate Immunity, and instead of Shock Immunity, he has immunity to Cold Snap and Frostbite if his rod is active. And Annihilus is a perfect comparison in my opinion, because he is also a villain, he's a Cosmic Champion, I have him at the same rank and rarity. His damage output isn't known to be awful or insanely amazing, so I think that is going to be a good kind of like baseline stat to compare him to. And lastly, so the main objectives of today's video will be to gauge his damage output. We'll also going to try and take a look at how realistic is the actual damage rotation and how easy or hard it is to pull it off in any meaningful difficulty fight. And we're going to try and find his main utilities and place where he could or, well, will not be used. Right, so for the damage test, we're going to be using a team of Nick Fury, Quake, Deadpool X-Force, and Super-Skrull. But let's jump in the fight and see how it goes. So his rotation is very complex on paper. Realistically, it's not as bad, but the base idea is you start the fight with this Cosmic Power buff, and every second your next action kind of determines what kind of buff you are getting. Once you reach 5, you enter Cosmic Overload, and you gain this power gain buff, but you stop generating buffs. Now, since this is a longer fight, we will go to level 3 first, and you do that so you are basically able to gain an Aptitude Buff that will quite significantly increase the potency of the Furies and whatever other crit buffs you may get along the way. So I do want to bait out this special attack. Then I'm going to go for my level 3. We're going to gain the aptitude now. We are 30 hits in. We have dealt 2% of Winter Soldier's damage, but that should improve quite nicely starting now, basically. So he has that stun after level 3, which is a nice little touch. So I do want to bait out the level 1 here. I do not want to trigger falter buff yet. I want to get to as many Furies as I can, in fact. And I'm gonna go here, drop my level 1, gain a whole bunch of armor ups, and now I want to rush to my level 2. But before I drop my level 2, ideally I want to trigger that falter. And then, well, I didn't want to trigger it now, but it's fine either way. I kind of messed it up a bit. So we can already see that even in a fight as straightforward as Winter Soldier 1, it's not quite as easy to get the ideal rotation, because I didn't even get the Nova Fists in here. But either way, let's try again. So I do have my Nova Fists triggered here, so each hit inflicts an Incinerate, which obviously is the main source of his damage in this reality, because we're not seeing any meaningful amount of damage otherwise here. But we can see a bunch of Incinerates, which was quite helpful. Right, so we do have a healthy chunk of Furies here. 1 armor up, which is perfectly fine. So when I enter my, well, I am in my Cosmic Overload now, so that's perfect. We're gonna go for level 1. And see what happens now. So he has energy, resistance, weakness, but we need to kind of rush to that level 2. So hopefully this time should be able to get the Nova Fists again. And when we do everything, and it's not quite as easy to time and align everything, you do deal somewhat decent amount of damage. We're gonna get to 200 hits in this fight, see how far we're at in his health bar, but we're not gonna go past 200 hits. And then we're gonna quit out and bring in a Nihilus just to compare a champion with significantly more simple damage output, to be honest. Significantly more simple rotation for the damage. So I do have 10 Furies here, which is awesome. I should start generating more of them. Fair enough. So 8 Furies active. My no fists, or whatever they're called, are putting in work. So 200 hits is where we're about to be in. And we're gonna stop straight up here. So he's at, let's let the Incinerate damage tick out, at 53%. Whoa, hold it right here. If you have been enjoying the video this far, then please do not forget to hit that like button, hit that sub button, all the other good buttons, because that definitely does help me out. Right, let's get back to the video. Right, so we are back here again with exactly the same team, exactly the same setup, just moments after, and we're gonna go in and see how Super-Skrull's damage will compare to Nihilus himself. Now, again, Nihilus is a very decent champion in my opinion to compare Super-Skrull to, because they do have relatively similar kits on the surface. Right, so we're gonna basically just go for pure level 2 strategy. We're just gonna go in and drop our special 2s as and when we get them, hopefully with as many obliterates on opponent as possible. Keep in mind that Nihilus' offensive power rate increases the more obliterates I have an opponent. Now, there is a way to play the guy with level 1s, and you can kind of bank in your obliterates and pause them and then kind of like build up for bigger level 2s. But I think for vast majority of the people, the standard rotation with the Nihilus is always just build up to level 2 and do as much damage as you can. You can see that, yeah, I think Super-Skrull's actually so far in the lead. So, obviously Recoil is dealing significant amount of damage, therefore neither Nihilus or Super-Skrull are suicide-friendly champions. And we can see that Winter Soldier is at 60% health, so purely based on damage output, he hits harder than Nihilus, and Nihilus was not a champion that got heavily criticized for his damage output. And yeah, I think that also kind of showcases that maybe occasionally MCOC community just jumps slightly too quickly to the conclusions, because his damage output definitely isn't great, neither is Annihilus's, but it's definitely far from being an unplayable or like complete noodle. It's just that it isn't as shiny, as great as it could have been, as we had hoped it would be. Right, but now off to the next bit. Right, so here we are in the Cavalier difficulty quest, and one of the recent kind of like highlights of Annihilus's performance has been the new Cosmic Node. Basically, because he has access to a lot of armor breaks, he's very suited for the new Cosmic Node. Now, unfortunately, Super-Skrull doesn't really have access to armor breaks on his base kit. However, with an Iron Fist synergy, he can trigger them every time he gains a Fury buff, which should hopefully let me take benefit from the global node here and gain a ton of Furies passively, passive Furies. And with that, I hopefully should be able to actually deal some decent amount of damage. Now, I do not think I did the correct rotation here thus far. However, we have been relatively successful at keeping armor breaks on the guy, and at the same time we have also gained 6 passive furies from the node. Now, unfortunately, at this point I have entered my cooldown phase, so I do need to be quite patient, and hopefully though we will get where we want to go. And here we go, we have Incinerates, we have 9 Furies, 10 passive Furies, and at this point we should be dealing some significant amount of damage to Killmonger. Right, so here in theory, Super-Skrull should have a very great matchup against Professor X because he is on Power Shield node, and Super-Skrull is a champion that has, let's say, enhanced access to special attacks due to the power gain buff, and also he has access to Vigilance buff on his base kit, so you could theoretically work around Falter relatively easily. And this is one of the main points of today's video about the chaotic nature of this character and how tricky often it is to actually work his abilities in, because there's a lot to look at, a lot to keep in mind, and due to that you can't reliably often control the guy. So you can see that there I did not have Vigilance active, and at the heat of the fight, I'm not even entirely sure what would be the perfect rotation for me to do in order to activate that Vigilance. So I can see that Falter is there, but I'm working it out. That's Falter on him though. So he's just dropping his special attacks, and when I needed that Falter was nowhere to be seen there. Okay, now I have entered my Cosmic Overload mode, and I will go for my level 2, and it does decent amount of damage. Just need to avoid Professor X here, which is fair enough. And still, I didn't have enough Furies active to gain my mega damage mode. Once again, I fell for the Falter here, Professor X. Luckily, I didn't get punished. But the main point still stands here, that when it comes to using his utility in difficult fights, certainly isn't easy and intuitive. I'm not going to make a claim that I am playing this guy well. I clearly am not. I just missed again. And yeah, I definitely could have played this fight a lot better. But there is a difference in between having a utility and having a reliable, easy to access utility. And why don't I get wrecked at the end? And unfortunately, Super-Skrull does not have in simply straightforward controllable utility. Unfortunately, his is quite difficult to command for not enough payback. So ultimately, I regret to inform you that the character in its current state does seem to be extremely underwhelming. Right guys, so this has been my early hands-on experience with Super-Skrull, and going back to the main objectives of the video, we have actually made sure that his damage output is far from as bad as it has been made out to be in your average MCOC circles. His damage output is definitely not insane, but it's also not even close to being unplayable. It's actually quite decent by comparison to an average damage champion. However, the realistic rotation, it's also not quite. You would have to spend a lot of time practicing Super-Skrull to play him perfectly and gain the max damage output, but even then your abilities would be significantly tested in harder matchups because there's a lot of things happening on the screen at the same time. And when I was playing against Winter Soldier, I actually felt that it was just much more simple to let things happen and kind of hope for the best. And that is not what you want from your character. You want reliable utility that you feel in control of and that you can command at a moment's notice. If you need falter, you want to get to that falter now, not 2 special attacks later. So unfortunately, I do not think that his kit is extremely well designed. And when it goes to his main utilities, outside of having access to a lot of buffs, which literally every single Cosmic Champion can do, and access to Incinerate, having Incinerate and Shock Immunity, that's a solid core. I like that. The power gain is relatively unimpressive. Your unblockables, your vigilances, your no fists, and everything else is, again, seems quite far in between activations and just nowhere near powerful enough to make him a front runner for any of those abilities. If you need a champion with vigilance, you will 100% be better off using Professor X. If you need a champion who can access Incinerate, go Human Torch, go Sunspot, go any other of these champions who can do it reliably, consistently throughout the entire fight, but not in short bursts of meaningless badass, whatever it is. Right, seems like I'm quite harsh on Super-Skrull, however, I will continue to keep my eye on him. Perhaps there are some things that will change my opinion about him, especially as I play with him a bit more, and hopefully just discover some better mainstream use for him. That has been it for today, and dare I say, a sub to the channel would be absolutely amazing. So if you have enjoyed today's video, please do hit that like button, do hit that sub button, and I will catch you guys soon. See ya. Hello there guys, and welcome back to the channel. So we have all the information